Good evening, everybody. Just want to make sure we are fully logged in before I start this meeting. But good evening, everybody. I'm Rawlson King, Counselor for Rita Rockcliffe, and welcome to my year-end mini town hall. This is really going to be designed for people to have a brief opportunity to ask questions, but also for me to provide an update as to all things that have been going on in the ward. I don't expect this meeting will be taking too long in a sense. We are really just scheduled for an hour, but we want to at least give you a year end update and also give you an opportunity to ask a few questions about all things that are going on in the ward and the city. So once again, good evening, everybody. I'm Rawlson King, Counselor for Rita Rockcliffe, and welcome to my year-end town hall. It's been a year that will go down in history. The COVID-19 pandemic has changed a lot of things, but what has remained constant is my commitment to you as your ward counselor to bring positive change in our community. Despite the many challenges posed, my team and I have still been working hard on your behalf, and this mini town hall will provide a snapshot of what we've done this year, and will also provide you with a brief opportunity to ask me questions. In terms of the things that we have been really engaged on, there have been a numerous number of files. One of them has been heritage, because heritage preservation is about maintaining a sense of place. I was honored this year to be selected in February, before the COVID pandemic, as chair of the Built Heritage Subcommittee. So I had the honor of that appointment. And during my short tenure there, I've been able to protect, enhance, and promote the city's architectural and urban heritage resources through the addition of more than 700 properties to the citywide heritage register. I think that this is important, and the level of work that we've done on heritage is especially important for Rita Rockcliffe, in my estimation, as we do have a number of heritage conservation districts in our ward. I would say one of the highest concentrations, with both New Edinburgh having a heritage conservation district, and Rockcliffe Park. So it's very important for us to do a lot of good work on heritage. We've also been focused on race relations, as you might know. So, to advance equity and diversity, I was appointed as council liaison for anti racism and ethnocultural relations initiatives in June 2020. In my first year in office as well, I successfully secured funding for the city's anti racism secretariat to ensure that the City of Ottawa's services are delivered equitably to all residents. The new anti racism office will undertake community engagement next year to address issues that include employment equity, uh, economic development, health, and youth development. So I would say watch out for that in the new year. In January, we're going to see some action planning that will take place by the Anti Racism Secretariat. And you'll be able to learn more about that through communications through my office, and also by watching the Engage Ottawa website, where information is provided concerning a public consultation exercises at the city. In terms of public safety, in October 2020, I was nominated to the Police Services Board, the civilian body that governs the Ottawa Police Service. The board represents community interests and is accountable to the province. I'll bring the insights from my council anti racism mandate to develop a sustained commitment to inclusion and diversity within the police, and to address the challenges of systemic racism. Before my appointment, I worked with the Black community to restore the police service's hate crimes unit in the wake of the racist incident that happened in our own ward a month after my election. It's something that I'm looking forward to. I am a new appointee. I've only been there for I would say 6 or 7 weeks now. But the challenge will be to work with the police service to ensure that we do enhance equity, diversity, inclusion, and mental health initiatives, as well as training across the board at the police service. In terms of poverty and affordable housing, within our ward, as you might know, we have some of the highest rates of food bank usage in Ontario. And I will be working to release a poverty reduction strategy proposal in early 2021. We will be targeting January, which will call for the creation of a food security coordinator. So look out for that in the new year. We will be releasing that document publicly, and we have worked over the last year with community associations and social service organizations to really develop out this proposal. Now, it's key to emphasize that this is a proposal. It has to go through processes with council, but we want to really ensure that people understand the nature and the depth of the problem in Rideau Rockcliffe surrounding poverty and also citywide. I'm also working with other elected officials in our area through a new task force to tackle affordable housing challenges, which will include identifying funding sources and locations, potential locations for supportive housing. So one of the good news stories during this COVID crisis is that all of the elected officials in the coterminous federal and provincial riding, both federal and provincial, have been all working together. We've been meeting on a weekly basis. We've been talking about multiple issues. And one of the issues that all levels, all representatives from all levels of government have really identified is the need for more affordable housing and the need to work on those issues together. So that's what we're going to do. In terms of road safety, after listening to residents' concerns, I began to reduce speed limits across the ward with the introduction of residential gateway zones. We had undertaken quite a process to do that, so we had an online survey, which was followed up by a ward council meeting where priorities were identified by multiple community members. So the first zones, and I'm very proud of this, the first zones of these residential gateways were introduced in Lindenlea, in New Edinburgh, and in Overbrook this autumn to bring down maximum speeds to 40 kilometers on residential streets. Now, one of the key things that we want to emphasize is that that's just the beginning. It is harder to get the streets down to 30 kilometers per hour, but there has been some success in other intercore wards and within the urban core, and we are going to continue to work on that with our colleagues to work through transportation committee to really examine whether that is possible based on the regulations that we have in place. It's not going to be easy, but we have at least established the signage in such a way so that if there is the possibility of lowering the speed limits even lower, we will attempt to do that. The other key thing is that a new four-way stop was installed at the entry to St. Laurent complex, and a new red light camera will be installed on Montreal Road at Brittany Drive. A new pedestrian crossing will also be installed at North River Road and Stevens Avenue. In terms of winter recreation, I'm very proud of the fact that I worked with multiple community members as well as Councillor Fleury from Rideau Vanier and also Councillor Menard from Capital Ward on the formalization and the creation and expansion of the Rideau Winter Trail pilot that connects Overbrook, Vanier, and Herdman Bridge. This community-led initiative provides a winter trail for cross-country skiing, snowshoeing, walking, and snow biking. The trail will be a prime destination for outdoor activities in the heart of Ottawa this winter and can be accessed next to the Ottawa crossing on Donald Street. And so we don't have enough snow yet, but when we have the snow, there will be weekly grooming of that path through a lot of efforts that all of the councillor's office have made in conjunction with many community members and different organizations, including the Rideau Sports Centre. So we want you to enjoy. That will be, in a sense, wonderful recreation, especially in these COVID times, socially distanced. very safe and a way to keep individuals and families active. So we are very excited about that. And if you want to learn some more information about that, please go to one word, ridowintertrail.ca, and you'll be able to get some information about the trail. There's also an effort underway to ask people to donate. This is very much a community-driven initiative. The councillors' offices are involved, the city is involved, the NCC is involved because it's on NCC land. But the key is the community is really the beneficiary of a lot of the efforts that emerge, especially around the donations towards the effort. So we would encourage you to learn more about it, and if you can, please donate to the cause. In terms of revitalization in Overbrook, the community was recently pleased to celebrate the completion of the Four Corners Community Beautification Project at Queen Mary and Lola. You might have seen it. There were physical improvements to the asphalt, to the container gardens in the vicinity. There was the installation of murals, installation of lighting. So we are near the end of that project, and I'm very pleased that's the case. That project, like I said, includes street front and landscape improvements, enhanced lighting, and new public art installations. Lola Park was also opened in 2020 to increase recreational opportunities for residents. That's a very exciting development as well. During the summer, I saw it was being well used, and obviously it's a natural pathway. There is a bike repair station on site. So I think it is a very exciting addition to the Overbrook neighborhood. And Ottawa Community Housing has begun a research project to energy retrofit 4 older townhomes, and is also beginning a tenant and community engagement process focused on neighborhood redevelopment. So as we know, a lot of the OCH properties in Overbrook are at end of life. A lot of those townhomes, semis, and quads are actually 70 years old. They've reached their end of life, and they will either need retrofitting or there will need to be redevelopment in the neighborhood. And this will be a years-long process, and a process that will ensure, obviously, that people are properly engaged and properly rehoused, if that is what will happen. But that's many years down the road. The key for us right now is ensuring that we have a very engaged conversation with residents to really determine, when the community is redeveloped, what type of community the residents, the tenants, want to see. And so OCH is undertaking that exercise, and will continue to undertake that exercise in 2021. In terms of restoration in New Edinburgh, the completion of the combined sewage storage tunnel project has led to the restoration of green space in Stanley Park. I also addressed the pre-existing gap in the Rideau River Eastern Parkway pathway, which is primarily a primary cycling route, with the addition of a new segment of multi-use pathway between the south limit of Stanley Avenue and the north side of the park playground, where the pathway transitions to and from mixed traffic. This is very important because there was this gap where the path just kind of disappeared into the road. That has been corrected. A lot of work has been undertaken to do that. So there was actually relocation of hydro infrastructure to do that. But that was part and parcel of the restoration process. And we are pleased that that has been undertaken. It's also key to note that roads continue to be rebuilt and restored in that area as the project comes to completion. In terms of the tree canopy at Council, I was supportive of accelerating the implementation of a new tree bylaw to protect distinctive trees above 30 centimeters in diameter. To revitalize the Overbrook neighborhood, hundreds of trees, shrubs, plants, and flower plantings will occur over the next year. And I'm also going to work with city staff to examine the revitalization and reforestation of Bathgate Park in the Carson Groves environs of the ward. I think it's very important for us to ensure that we are contributing back to the tree canopy and strengthening it, ensuring that we are adding to biodiversity, and ensuring that we are putting mechanisms, the natural mechanisms in place to deal with greenhouse gas emissions. So it's very, very important for us to really look at that environmental component, and we will continue to do so. In terms of Rockcliffe Park protection, I successfully secured the restoration of pre-amalgamation setbacks in Rockcliffe Park this year. So we were able to go to council after some consultation with the planning department, to really restore what was actually put in place by the previous municipality, by the village of Rockcliffe Park. And the rule restores the setbacks for accessory buildings to 5 feet. In May and June 2020, the city also built a retaining wall and installed loose rock to protect the pond's shoreline from erosion, along with stabilizing its banks. And I'll continue to work with the Residents Association on potential repairs to the dog walk and to safeguard the special park-like nature of the Rockcliffe Park Heritage Conservation District. In terms of First Nations reconciliation, after conducting consultations and circulating surveys, and with the support of the Linden Lee community, Langevin Avenue is set to be renamed Commanda Way. This change is in recognition of Algonquin Elder William Commanda's advocacy for peace and reconciliation, and part of my ongoing commitment to address systemic racism in our community. So I was proud at the last council meeting to actually introduce a notice of motion to move that forward. We had wide consultation with the community through specific channels, such as the community's listserv, the community's newsletter, and also direct surveys with the residents on Langevin who asked for this change going back to 2018. So I'll be excited to engage in that debate at the January meeting, the first meeting in the new year of council. In terms of budget, I'll give you a very quick synopsis because that's what we were dealing with over the last month. So it's been a very busy period. As we go into November, we are really what really predominates the legislative agenda are budgets. And one of the things that we did do as urban city councilors was hold our annual joint budget consultation, which focused on housing. So we did that in October. Then in late October, we received the budget documents, the proposed documents. And then throughout November into early December, every committee, because all the reports and all budgets ultimately rise to council, but go through committee for deliberation debate. The budget basically went through multiple stages of committee work, which I audited and participated in, and then moved forward. One of the things that I had noted as we were looking at the budget was that this budget was a status quo document in my estimation. There are many challenges that are confronting the city, especially with COVID-19. And I did vote against the city budget last week because in my estimation, the nearly $4 billion operating budget and the nearly just north of $780 million capital budget that were presented were more suited to status quo conditions, in my estimation, and did not reflect the fact that social needs have increased due to the COVID-19 pandemic. As we know in our ward, 50% of the children live in poverty. And our ward has historically had the largest food bank usage in the province, which only increased during the pandemic, actually. So imagine, being within the top 10 of the provincial usage levels, and then having a 10 to 15% minimum increase in food bank usage. I think that that really tells you the issues that we were really seeing exacerbated within the period of COVID. And we also have to note that we are disproportionately affected in our ward by higher rates of unemployment, lower rates of education. These are big challenges that create large problems, along with higher levels of COVID infection. So when I looked at the budget, I said that apart from the fact that the budget was needing to depend on funds flowing down from the federal and provincial governments to make up stop gaps that total approximately $153 million. Apart from that, the budget was not, in my mind, comprehensive enough to deal with a lot of the challenges, especially the social challenges that we were seeing. So, while I could not vote in good conscience for the budget in the new year, as I had mentioned before, I will be introducing a proposal that will advocate for a community-driven poverty reduction strategy for the city, which will work towards more measurable, costed initiatives and clear timelines to better address the needs of people in poverty. The other key budget that I did not vote in favor for was the Police Services Board. And as you might know, and as I had stated at the beginning of this town hall, I had just been recently appointed to Police Services Board. I actually assumed the mayor's seat to bring a equity and diversity lens to the Police Service Board. And while I did believe that we were on a better trajectory for the police service in terms of service transformation, in terms of the inclusion of equity, diversity, inclusion, in terms of looking at a mental health strategy under the leadership of Chair Diane Deans of the Police Services Board, and also the leadership of the police service by Chief Slowly. It became very clear to me as I started to participate at the board that more public consultation was necessary, especially with equity-seeking groups. So the reason why I did not vote in favor of the budget at Police Services Board is because my preference was not to increase expenditures beyond meeting statutory employment obligations and collective agreement increases without a better public consultation framework, especially for equity-seeking groups that include Black, Indigenous, and racialized communities. I sat through 150 delegations. It was very tough in terms of what we heard from people and their concerns about the police. And what was very clear to me was, even though the approach of the police was transformation in terms of the structure of the service, we do need to have a better framework for public consultation to ascertain how we should move forward. So that was very important. And so I really do believe that in order to obtain realistic changes at the police service, we will require not just appropriate financial resources to undertake modernization, which incidentally is a key objective of this budget, but we will also need the underlying support of the communities that will be the ultimate beneficiaries of transformation. So it's one thing for us to plan out transformation, but we also have to have the people at the table who would benefit from that. And to be honest with you, I think that the police service and the police board are taking the steps to really work towards that. So while I dissented to the budget board deliberations, I do believe that the board, under the leadership of Chair Deans and under the leadership, the police service itself, under the leadership of Chief Slowly, are demonstrating a strong collective commitment to change within this and the next budget cycle by unanimously approving initiatives aimed at reducing the new number of police officers hired by the service. So they're looking at a mechanism to substitute people who have been hired as sworn officers into more civilian roles that might be able to deal with the social service elements of engagement. The board was also looking at approving a mediated consultation process to address building trust with the Black, Indigenous, and racialized communities. I think that's very important. As I said, we have to build some reciprocity in terms of our interactions with one another to build that trust and to really determine what are the best ways forward, and that needs to be community led. And we also looked at providing more resources for public engagement through the Police Services Community Equity Council, making sure that volunteers who are working to better the relationship with the police and racialized, religious, and Indigenous communities actually have more resources to actually do that effectively. But most importantly, this last process really did approve the establishment of a new task force that will seek a 2022 budget that would freeze funding at 2021 budget levels. And I think that's very important. We were hearing from the community that there is a want for detasking. We don't want the police to be acting as social workers. We want them to be just focused on a narrow set of tasks. And in order for us to do that, we have to ensure that the resources are being allocated properly to other areas. So we're going to continue to work on that in conjunction with the Police Services Board and with the community, because I think that that's what we heard through groundbreaking consultation, in a sense, testimonies from people from the 150 delegations that we had heard from during the budget deliberation. In terms of ward boundaries, there was a ward boundary process that was undertaken throughout the year, and I was bitterly disappointed concerning Council's decision concerning ward boundaries and its impact on Ward 13. Community members really do feel strongly about their identity and were rightly angry that they did not have a full opportunity to be consulted about the boundary changes proposed by consultants, independent consultants that were hired to be in charge of the ward boundary review. When community members were consulted in the summer, the boundaries used in the final option that ultimately would be approved were the traditional boundaries, which reflected the traditional boundaries between Overbrook and Vanier and Cardinal Glen and Vanier. So in a sense, these were the old City of Ottawa boundaries, the old former municipality of Vanier boundaries. But shortly before these came to committee, these traditional boundaries were adjusted to specific streets. And the streets were MacArthur and Donald. And using MacArthur Avenue as a boundary obviously does not work for Vanier, and using Donald Street as a boundary does not work for Overbrook. Residents aren't happy, and I wasn't happy that this ultimately became a zero-sum equation. The difference between moving the boundary is about 200 meters in either direction. And so if the purpose of the boundary review was predominantly to maintain voter parity, this change did not make a difference in population size. A difference of less than 2,000 people in either direction in Rideau Rockcliffe is actually well within its tolerance. The idea behind the ward boundary review was to ensure voter parity, especially as there were areas in the west end of the city that were seeing greater population growth and unmanageable effective population, effective representation based on the expansion of the population. And so we don't have that problem in Rockcliffe Park, or in Rideau Rockcliffe. We don't have that issue because the reality is the tolerance is up to 50,000 residents. We have 40,000 residents, I think, in terms of some of the projections for the next 10 to 20 years. We'll see at least 10,000 new residents in one area in Wateridge Village. But for 3 election cycles, ultimately, we would be able to maintain a reasonable level of effective representation with the current population that we have now. It's not, that's completely unlike areas in the west end of the city, like Barrhaven, where you have wards such such as the Barrhaven area, that have 60,000 people. So you have an excess of 10,000 people above parity. So this is the challenge. The challenge for our neighborhood was the fact that the consultants really wanted to focus on straight lines, and really focused on specific streets rather than historic boundaries. The same can be said of the Cardinal Glen neighborhood boundaries, which affect 1,000 people and is tied very much directly to the Manor Park neighborhood rather than Vanier. And the change would have that neighborhood incorporated into Rideau Vanier. As I had said, this ultimately created a zero-sum boundary model that does not work for any community, whether it's Vanier, whether it's Overbrook, whether it's Cardinal Glen. Nobody wants this, just for the sake of creating tidy boundaries. So we heard from the community, and that is why at the last council meeting, I did introduce motions with Councillor Fleury to restore the traditional boundary. Community and identity are shaped by many factors, and the boundary between Vanier and Overbrook especially has worked for more than 70 years. Both are key communities of interest with strong cultural, socioeconomic, and linguistic distinctions. So in our estimation, moving the boundary to Donald Street ultimately really truncated and bifurcated and divided the community residential areas into another ward. The local community resource center uses the boundaries of the ward as their catchment. They and the community associations are also invested in their neighbors and have worked hard with them to be connected to social service supports and resources. And they ultimately did not want to see their neighbors move to a different ward. When we heard from our communities, we reacted, but unfortunately, council, due to specific political dynamics and a reluctance to challenge the consultant's decision, because of that, ultimately the zero-sum boundaries were accepted. But in the meantime, I'll continue to work with the Overbrook and Cardinal Glen neighborhoods to continue to address and improve the myriad social economic issues that really do need to be addressed. So, this is a challenge for neighborhoods, but I do want you to know that we will work together to really see if we can surmount the challenge that we will face around ward boundaries. The ward boundary review exercise was for the next 3 elections, so it would only come into effect in those after 2022. But in the meantime, there's a tremendous amount of work that still needs to be done in our communities, and as community associations and as elected official, we are going to continue that important work. In terms of the next major consultations, I just want you to know that a key one will concern the refresh of our official plan, which I have actually over here on my table. And so it's going to, we got a draft of this in October. It is now under review. There was some consultation that was undertaken. And the official plan is the major blueprint for the city. So we will invite you to participate in that process. There will be more public consultation exercises through Zoom, and there will be definitely more public consultation through engage.ottawa.ca, the public consultation council portal, the public consultation portal for the city. We will also see a public consultation concerning redevelopment of the land surrounding the baseball stadium at 300 Coventry Road. Early this year, I had directed staff to undertake that type of exercise so that we can have a future vision of a transit-oriented development near to LRT with the capacity for us to have an exciting potential for mixed-use development, especially focused on affordable housing. Because as we know in transit-oriented developments, there are inclusionary zoning elements to those transit-oriented developments that allow us to see the development of affordable housing. So that is also going to take place in early 2021, and I will happily invite everybody to get involved in that process, and we'll be informing people as to how to get involved in that process. So I'd like to wrap up the formal comments that and review for the year here, and now move on to questions. So if there are any questions, we are going to entertain those questions on the site through the chat. I'm here for a few more minutes, so we are happily going to entertain any questions that you might have. But the reality too is that we wanted to ensure that you had this video for a review and to get a sense of the many things that we had undertaken this year. So I'm just waiting to see if there are any specific questions. I know that I did provide a lot of information here. And I see one question here. Can you let us know if the pop-up COVID-19 testing site in Vanier will also be there in 2021? I have to be honest with you. I will have to take a look at the continued testing capacity. I think it's good that we do have that testing capacity now there in Vanier. I will have to determine and check with staff to see the length of time that will continue. What we have seen in the past is that COVID testing, number one, is a little bit more complex because it's not just the purview of the city. The city actually does make space available for the testing in certain sites. So we've seen that with the testing site at City Hall / NAC downtown. But the reality is that those determinations are actually made by the hospitals. So we do work in conjunction with the hospitals, but they do have a tendency to change the location. As you know, we advocated very hard for the location at Coventry Road. It was not what we fully expected because it was only a drive-through location. And because of usage patterns, the testing did change in terms of the locations and the testing patterns. So I will look into that with staff to see how long that is anticipated to be at that location, but I can't give you specifics at this time. It is a conversation that is ongoing based on decisions that healthcare providers make. Oh, sorry, and that was from MC. So thank you, MC, for that question. And I don't know if there are any other questions. Just scrolling down. There is a comment, it will be important because of the lack of access to testing sites close to Overbrook, and OPH report determined that we are one of the most effective areas in Ottawa. You're absolutely right. One of the things that we have been working on with multiple partners and we have been advocating for with Ottawa Public Health, along with Ottawa Local Immigration Partnership, is a program of outreach to communities that are vulnerable. And so we just want you to know that Overbrook is engaged in that effort. This is an effort that is being undertaken by OLIP, undertaken by the Somerset West Community Health Center. And the approach is different. The approach is direct engagement, where doors are knocked on. So I'm actually going to experience that tomorrow. I'm going to knock on some doors with some of these health providers, as well as the Rideau Rockcliffe Community Resource Center. In a sense, they're wellness checks that go directly to people who might be vulnerable. Those checks are undertaken with people who are multilingual, who are able to engage and go directly to households to see what their needs are and to see if they ultimately do require testing. So these things are important. I fully agree with you. We want to ensure that Ottawa Public Health is working hand in hand with the community to really engage the community directly. We think that is probably a better approach, especially to really do checks on the more potentially vulnerable neighbors within our communities. So we do hear you, and that ideally would be a mechanism to determine, in terms of health checks, whether testing is needed in specific households, or whether other resources are necessary. So it is a different type of direct model, but there have already been hundreds of doors that have been knocked on through the city, and Overbrook is one of those neighborhoods where that work is being undertaken. So I'm going to continue to scroll down. And I see my friend David Gourlay from Shepherds of Good Hope is saying happy holidays, and happy holidays to Shepherds of Good Hope that does so much wonderful work in our community. I'm just overwhelmed by their focus on not just neighbors, but also on other issues, including equity, which is quite exciting. That they want to really participate in a tremendous number of these items, and especially around equity and diversity in the portfolio that I'm undertaking with the Anti-Racism Secretariat. They have been rock solid, not just supporting our most vulnerable, but also supporting the idea of greater equity in the city. So thank you, David, and happy holidays to you and yours. I see that Maura Brenda is asking a question. What is the biggest priority for you and Rita Rockcliffe going into 2021? I always take the priorities of the communities very seriously. So in my estimation, I try to listen to the community and take their lead. But if you're asking what my focus will be, it will be the poverty reduction strategy starting in January. It will be an extensive document that we'll be releasing. The work of City Hall never ends. I do try to get a little bit of sleep, but it was kind of shocking some of my colleagues saying, well, what are you doing over the holiday break? We hope you're taking time. And I said, no, I'm going to take some time, but one of the things that we are going to be working on, or I'm going to be working on personally, is finalizing that poverty reduction strategy so that we have a holistic approach towards addressing one of the number one issues in our ward, because I do believe that 50% of children in poverty being in our ward is really unacceptable. We need to have a more holistic approach towards poverty reduction. We have not had a poverty reduction strategy in the city for 10 years, and it's absolutely necessary that we have one. So we'll be working. We worked with the community associations who were wonderful. The community associations in Ward 13, with the addition of Vanier Community Association, all got together and actually contributed substantially to this report. So the idea is they want to see a community-based poverty reduction strategy with key inputs. We obtained those inputs over the year, and we are going to work on finalizing that proposal, and we're going to work to release it, and to work with city council colleagues and the mayor to see if we can advance that into a city strategy. Remember, all I can do is propose. We have a council and a system, committee system that we have to bring it to, and then make the key arguments of the necessity of having it. So yes, Maura, look forward to the document. We are going to release that publicly, and it's going to be important for you to get involved, for you to advocate, for you to write the mayor, to write the new head of Community and Protective Services Committee about the need for this. We're going to have a time where we can have a good public debate on the veracity of the ideas that are going to be suggested, and to determine whether we will move forward with those priorities. The last point I'm going to make on this is that those were not the priorities that were reflected in the budget that I voted against. We will now have, another 12 months to have a wider discussion about what is necessary before we go into a future budget. Hopefully, a budget that will be a better one, because, ideally, we move past COVID. And when we move past COVID with vaccines, when we start to really bring down the rate of infection, we'll still be vigilant with masks and everything else. But as we bring that down and as revenues return to normal, ideally, we should look at these proper investments. Okay, so I see another question, I think, from MC. Last question from MC. How can we work with the city to ensure that Overbrook residents have access to the new winter trail? Can we get some programming at low cost with the city? So I'm really excited about the Rideau Winter Trail. A lot of work has been undertaken by Overbrook residents, by Nikki Bridgeland at the Rideau Sports Center, by Councillors Fleury, myself, and Menard, where we actually formalized the Rideau Winter Trail of Ottawa organization to undertake regular grooming. So we undertook an incorporation exercise, an insurance exercise. The councillors' offices all agreed to provide money, seed money for the organization. The organization just created a crowdfunding campaign trying to raise $5,000, and within the first 4 days raised over $3,000. Money will be forthcoming from both the city and the NCC also to seed this. So the idea is to have a lower cost recreation that is right in our backyard. So people will not have to bear the cost of going to the Gatineau Hills to ski. The path has been expanded from 2.5 kilometers to 9 kilometers in terms of the conception. We brought in Councillor Menard to really extend the linkages over to Old Ottawa South to those environs through Herdman Bridge. I know that Councillor Fleury was excited by the prospect of being able to get off at Herdman, probably with skis in hand, and then just go right onto the trail. So the idea is to have really inexpensive recreation where you're not spending much in terms of skis. The other key thing that the trail has done in the past, just to give you a sense of this, is had really inexpensive rentals. So they teamed with an organization that would set up a kiosk where you could rent skis for a very inexpensive amount for the day or for the weekend, and take advantage of the trail. And of course, you don't have to spend the money on the rental, or if you don't have skis, you can use your bike on the trail. You can snowshoe on the trail. So the idea is to really expand this network, and especially as we think about what is safe to do in COVID times, this is an excellent opportunity for the community. So we haven't had a deeper conversation about the specific programming that can take place, but we do want you to know that it's a very open concept. So obviously the trail is free for people to use. It is on public property. The challenge, of course, is the grooming. I do want you to know that notwithstanding COVID, there will be opportunities for families to get together. There will be fire pits. So at RSC, at the Rideau Sports Club, where people can enjoy hot chocolate or enjoy the company of family, because obviously in COVID times we have to stay safe. But there are these opportunities for us to really get together with an inexpensive type of recreation that really fully leverages the public spaces, public green spaces that we have. So I'm very excited to have been at the ground floor of this. I actually sit on the board of this new organization. And I'm proud to do so because I think that it's very exciting. I think a lot of residents have found it so exciting that they've donated a bit of money. And there's a bit of seed money from the city and from NCC to get this going as something that is low cost and accessible for people who are adjacent to neighborhoods where there are, some financial challenges for some families. So we do believe that this type of programming, and this is why I'm very supportive of it, because you're talking about the costs. I would agree with you on costs and look out for that in the poverty reduction strategy, that we should be pushing for barrier-free recreation, which really means affordable recreation. In an ideal world, in my mind, free recreation for the people who need it most. So thank you for that question. And I don't know if there are any more. I do know that we are coming up to the bottom of the hour, and this was just to be a brief update. We're here until 7:30. So if there are any other questions, I'm happy to entertain them. If they're not, I'll start to wrap up. Um, but I'm very pleased to have really provided this mini report to people to really kind of describe the busy year that we've had. COVID-19 has been a massive challenge to our city and to our community, but I must say that I take a tremendous amount of pride in the way that our community's actually stepped up to the plate. It's not just the way that the city has responded as a government, and I'm actually proud of that. You have to imagine the government with 17,000 people shifting almost overnight to a remote structure, and the fact that what makes me proud in terms of what makes me proud of the city is the fact that we continue to provide all the essential services that were necessary without skipping a beat. So transit was still, provided. Our water services were provided. Hydro was still provided. Garbage was still picked up, despite the challenge of a global pandemic where there were a lot of unknowns. So I'm very actually proud of staff, and I congratulate staff at every opportunity that I have to say that the job that they were confronted with was gigantic. But they actually took that task on well, and so I was proud of the city, but most proud of our community. The fact that the community associations actually got together in a collective called OttawaCares.ca and started to provide specific services to vulnerable communities, whether it was around food bank services or other social needs. The community itself came together and said that they were going to work to really help neighbors. And I think that is pretty typical of all of the residents, the community associations, like the sentiment, the general sentiment in Ward 13, in Rita Rockcliffe, people helping one another. I was proud of those efforts that occurred in Manor Park, that occurred in Overbrook, with care initiatives. I was proud of the fact that residents in Rockcliffe Park, who had a level of affluence, said, you know what, we are going to create a program where we donate to the resource center, and that money in turn is spent at local businesses or local bakeries to provide food to the most needy in our ward, so that there's dual benefit both to our small businesses and to the vulnerable. And so there are amazing initiatives that really took place in 2020 that have made me proud to really represent this ward, that really chastened me and said, look at the wonderful work that people are doing. It makes every day worthwhile. Fighting for better conditions, better quality of life of people, because the efforts that I'm putting in as elected official really, in a sense, just on a small scale, mirror the immersive and massive work that community members are doing every day. And so that's what made me very proud, and that's something that really, in a sense, makes me proud to be the city councilor here in Ward 13. The other thing is, I would be remiss if I did not actually thank my staff, my hardworking staff. I have wonderful staff members in my office, just three staff members and myself, who saw a massive increase in terms of resident inquiry. Obviously, we have a lot of people working from home and a lot of challenges with COVID. And I've only been a city councilor near to 2 years now, so for a year and 9 months. But other councilors have told me that the increase of inquiries that our office were receiving was at least in the order of 15 to 20%. And we felt that in terms of the phone calls. The staff is very dedicated to ensuring the betterment of the community and trying to follow up with the community members. I always say just have some patience with us, because every day we get a massive number of phone calls, 150 email inquiries, and we're trying our best to actually keep up with that added demand. But the staff is what makes that happen. And so I really do want to thank them for the incredible work that they have put in place over the last year, over very trying circumstances, challenging circumstances, and a lot of unknowns. And they had been very responsive and have worked hard on behalf of our residents. So I want to really thank them for the work that they do, and for their continued commitment to the ward. We like to joke, but it's true. I put my name down on a ballot. They did not, but they suffer some of the consequences of somebody who has put their name on the ballot in terms of criticism, whether it's warranted or not. But regardless of whether it's warranted or not, or whether it's challenging conditions, they weather on, and they do the hard work that's necessary to ensure proper response and proper service, proper public service to residents of Ward 13. So I would like to end this call by thanking them, and I would like to wish everybody a wonderful holiday season, a wonderful new year. I do want you to know that in the latter half of December, so the last 2 weeks of December, our offices will be closed, because I do believe that my staff deserves it's a well-deserved break. But we will be checking messages, obviously, intermittently. I will be around in the city. I'll be checking messages and making calls, and still working on behalf of people of Rita Rockcliffe during the holiday season. But our response might slow down just a little bit, but we will ensure that if there are any emergencies or any major issues that come up, that there will be obviously the response that is necessary to address those types of issues. So once again, I'd like to thank everybody who participated on this call, and I would like to wish you happy holidays on behalf of myself, my family, and my staff. Have a great night, and thank you for tuning in to this mini town hall. Thank you.